on your Alexa-powered smart speaker and on TuneIn, iHeart, and on Odyssey. Now, from the Signature Bank Studios, this is Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft and Amy Jacobson. America First with Sebastian Gorka today at 3, right before Sean Thompson at 4 on AM 560. The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan, and former ABC 7 political reporter Charles Thomas in for Amy J today.
Yep, that's me.
Charles, I told you yesterday, per Nick Kristof in the New York Times, the response to all things Biden Inc. related is to say that the real story here is a father tending to his baby boy's addiction problems. And if you think that was a one-off, or if you think that I'm overstating it, then you don't know how the D.C. press corps works, first of all. And the evidence will continue to mount in my favor, as it continued to mount in my favor yesterday when Anna Navarro on The View, the show that features and is for man-hating shrews, said this.
The Hunter Biden story, the scandal, the this, the that, it's also the story of a father's love. And Joe Biden has never and will never give up on his son Hunter, and will never treat him lesser than. And so he is a father first. Take it or leave it.
If love is a crime, Charles, lock me up.
Well, yeah. His father is right there by his side. He's sitting right here in the room with me. I mean, he was a doting father. He was right there with him.
He was asked, Joe Biden was asked again, did you lie when you said you'd never talked to Hunter Biden about the family's business dealings? He said, no, I never did. That's not what the whistleblowers say. That's not what the records seem to indicate. By the way, that WhatsApp message that you're referencing, Charles, of Hunter Biden telling the Chinese communist businessman, pay up, or my dad, who's sitting right next to me, and his friends are going to make your life miserable, words to that effect.
Yep.
That the authenticity of that message was basically confirmed by Hunter Biden's attorney, who just chalked it up to his problems with addiction. It was a dark period in his life, so on and so forth.
And Joe was not in the room with him, and prove it. Tell us. I mean, isn't that enough? Isn't that enough? Doesn't that warrant some determination?
Well,
and pronouncement by the FBI whether or not that did or did not happen?
Right. Well, the investigation is ongoing by David Weiss, so we're told, the Delaware U.S. Attorney for Delaware. Also, the story, the IRS whistleblower, again, Gary Shapley, that David Weiss told at least 6 witnesses last year that he lacked the authority to charge Hunter outside of Delaware and was denied special counsel status. So somebody's lying because Merrick Garland, of course, said the opposite on Friday. We played you yesterday. And here's what Kevin McCarthy says. If they can substantiate the claims of the whistleblower, and he's 6 witnesses, that's very specific. So there's 6 people that corroborate what the whistleblower said. And if they do, here's what Kevin McCarthy said is going to happen.
Yesterday, I laid out very, very clearly by July 6th, because of the allegations from the IRS, because of the whistleblowers and the DOJ, Garland, what he is saying and what David Weiss are saying privately are 2 different things.
Right.
And if it comes true what the IRS whistleblower is saying, we're going to start impeachment inquiries on the Attorney General.
For more on all this, we're pleased to be joined by William Jacobson. He's clinical professor of law and director of the Securities Law Clinic at Cornell Law School, founder of LegalInsurrection.com, and the president of the Legal Insurrection Foundation, as well as the creator of the Equal Protection Project. Professor Jacobson, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thank you for having me on.
So Merrick Garland in particular, Let's move to the chief law enforcement officer, since he's put the focus on himself with what he had to say on Friday, which is contradicted by with the testimony from whistleblowers. Merrick Garland's argument that David Weiss had all the authority needed, and that there was no need for he was never asked to be special counsel, but he never explained why special counsel in the classified doc case and no special counsel in the Hunter Biden Incorporated case. Merrick Garland seems to be sort of putting himself in a corner at this moment, doesn't he?
Well, this is a case where the attorney for the whistleblower said at a specific meeting, and he gave the date and the time and who was present, that David Weiss said the opposite. So was David Weiss telling the truth at that meeting, or in his letter to Congress, or whatever he told Merrick Garland? We don't know. I mean, there isn't actually an answer to this, and I think it's really important we get to that answer. And the answer may prove that David Weiss and Merrick Garland are right that he wasn't restrained, or it may prove that David Weiss, if he made these statements at the meeting, was right then. But I think we need to get to the bottom of this, because Merrick Garland, the Attorney General of the U.S., has now put his claim to the office essentially up for grabs by making a statement that there was no restraint on David Weiss. And that's either true or it's not true, and I think we need to get to that. And if it's not true, and if Merrick Garland said something about that was not true, then I think it will lend more credence to calls to impeach him.
It seems to me Kevin McCarthy is pretty confident to raise the specter of impeachment pending confirmation. But yeah, you're right. It needs to be substantiated, and I guess they're going to move in the direction of that process. The issue with the big guy as well. I mean, the suspension of disbelief effort is not working according to public polling. But even if Joe Biden knew and was seated next to Hunter when he was WhatsApping Chinese communists, and he was benefiting financially from Hunter Biden's dealings, there still is nothing technically illegal that we know of. There's the prospect of it, but this still just is on its face an influence peddling operation, right?
Well, it would, first of all, contradict everything Joe Biden has been saying for a number of years, including during his presidential campaign and from the White House, about his knowledge and involvement in Hunter Biden's dealings. So those statements by Joe Biden were not under oath. They weren't in court. I don't think there's a perjury there in a legal sense, but I think in a political sense, there's certainly a perjury there, that he's been lying about it the whole time, which I think everybody, well, not everybody, but half the country has been assuming. And so, that would give more credence to that. I think we need to know, when Hunter Biden said, "I'm sitting here with my father," and he said it a couple of times, was his father really sitting there? And the White House could just issue a statement, yes or no. But they're refusing to answer anything about it. And you're right. I mean, one of the issues is, would it in and of itself have been criminal? And I'm not sure that it would have been as to Joe Biden, but if Hunter Biden, it goes to the whole tax thing, if he wasn't disclosing what he was doing, if, he was elsewhere lying about his business dealings and covering things up, perhaps that's criminal. But to me, this is a very political issue, that if Joe Biden was sitting there, as Hunter Biden said, then, in that text message that's been made public, then Joe Biden has been lying the whole time about it.
Right. And then the whole, what else are you lying about? I mean, too, it'd be nice to know from David Weiss if the investigation that's ongoing, he says, does it include a potential look-see at the tax returns of all the Biden family members that have been identified by Jim Comer at House Oversight as having been on the financial distribution for Hunter Biden's compensation?
Yeah, well, that's the whole thing. The whole Biden family. I mean, this has been, again, it may not in isolation be illegal, assuming they properly accounted for all the funds, assuming there was no bribery for official action or anything like that. It just shows how deeply corrupted the Biden family has been through its influence peddling operation that's been going on for a really long time. That's how they got so rich. So, yeah, I mean, again, I get back to there may be crimes here. We need to know more, I think, but it also just shows how corrupt Joe Biden has been in terms of selling his influence. And if the Hunter Biden, a text message or WhatsApp message is accurate, that he was a participant in it.
And as you sort of intimated, a reminder, all you have to do is go back to, the Ukraine phone call. Impeachment is a political process. It's political by its nature. And so it doesn't require that the president have committed a crime or he's even alleged to have committed a crime. Perhaps, for example, the idea of doing business with foreign adversaries and then lying about it could be enough for impeachment proceedings on those merits.
Yeah, well, impeachment also is a very political process. What constitutes high crimes and misdemeanors is really going to be up to the Congress, be up to the House. No judge is going to make that decision. That's purely a congressional action. So, yeah, I mean, I think that, we all know Joe Biden's been lying about so much his entire political career. Anybody who would be shocked that in the last 4 years or 5 years, Joe Biden's been lying about influence peddling. That's been he's been, from plagiarism in law school through his entire political career. Joe Biden has not been taken seriously by anybody until the Democrats thought he was the best person to defeat Donald Trump. All of a sudden, he's the loving, grandfather. He's, Mr. Honest, etc. But that's not who Joe Biden's been his entire career. His entire career, he was the laughing stock of the Senate until they decided he was the one to beat Trump.
I wanted to get to Trump as well, since you brought him up. So CNN obtained a copy of the phone call that's memorialized in the indictment. Trump talking to a biographer for his former chief of staff, Mark Meadows. This is July of 2021, and this is an excerpt of that conversation. Take a listen.
We have obtained what is expected to be a central piece of the government's case against Donald Trump. The actual audio recording of the former president talking as if he's showing a highly classified document on U.S. war plans against Iran with people not cleared to even know it exists, let alone what's in it. In a moment, only on CNN, you will hear what jurors will hear one day. The recording was made 2 summers ago, July 2021, at the former president's club in Bedminster, New Jersey. You will clearly hear the former president as he is speaking to several people. According to the special counsel's indictment, they include a writer working on Mark Meadows' memoir, the publisher, and 2 of Trump's staff members. The president was aware he was being recorded. This is the first time it is being played publicly.
These are bad, sick people.
That was your coup, against you.
Well, it started right at the beginning.
Like when Milley's talking about, you were going to try to do a coup. No, they were trying to do that before you even were sworn in.
That's right.
Trying to overthrow your election.
Well, with Milley, let me see that. I'll show you an example. He said that I wanted to attack Iran. Isn't it amazing? I have a big pile of papers. This thing just came up. Look. This was him. They presented me this. This is off the record, but they presented me this. This was him. This was the Defense Department and him. Wow. We looked at some. This was him. This wasn't done by me. This was him. All sorts of stuff. It's pages long. Look. Wait a minute. Let's see here.
Yeah.
I just found, isn't that amazing? This totally wins my case,
Mm-hmm.
Except it is like highly confidential, secret. This is secret information. But look.
And Trump responding to Brett Baer in that interview he gave last week about about that.
What this points to is this recording where you said you could have declassified it when you were president. You didn't.
No,
so
I
it's
could
still
have
classified.
when I was president, but there's no document there. Those were newspaper articles.
Okay.
They were copies of articles and magazines. There was no document there. And I couldn't have done it after I was out.
What do you think, Professor?
Yeah, I mean, it's the tape is pretty, I think, devastating to his defense. Of course, he can only present his defense in court if he takes the stand. He can't play the Brett Baer interview. He can't play his own prior statements, but the prosecution sure can. And so, when after the Brett Baer interview, I pointed out that if the partial transcript the government has in the indictment is accurate, then it really does contradict what he said on Brett Baer's show, because in the transcript, it was pretty clear he was talking about a very specific document. He was and not talking about newspaper clippings, things like that. And it was a document prepared by the Department of Defense and given to him, and it's still secret, and he never declassified it. And the audio seems to back up that the transcript was accurate.
Well, and I assume that the people that he was talking to didn't actually see the document, didn't get a good enough look at it to know, and plus have the expertise to know whether it was a classified document or not. I mean, ostensibly you could get testimony from them if they did have knowledge of it.
Right. I mean, the audio itself, if there was no other evidence, the audio may not be enough to prove beyond a reasonable doubt what it was that he had. But, these are not stupid prosecutors, okay? I have to believe, and it was reported that they've, I think back in March, or maybe it was January at this point, but at some point they, called to the grand jury one of the aides who was present there.
Right.
So I assume they've taken testimony from Trump's own aides, from the people who were at the interview, and I presume they're not stupid. It's not just the recording, that they will have people who will confirm what this document was.
But there's another aspect of this too. This is July of 2021, so this is well before it starts to escalate between. I mean, I know there was a back and forth, but it really didn't escalate between Trump and the National Archives and the referral to the Justice Department stuff until later that year in the beginning of 2022. So even if he's got that document, one could potentially argue, say, well, look, he did, but he didn't disclose it, and it wasn't like there was it wasn't an environment where things had ratcheted up to being a prosecutorial issue at that point.
Well, I mean, I guess a couple of things there. I went back the other day and reread the indictment. I don't believe he's charged with actually disclosing the document. He's charged with having it. Okay. And so, and providing some level of access to it. I don't think there's a claim that that these people actually read the document.
Right.
Maybe I'm wrong. I'm wrong about
I think that's right.
Okay. And so the question is going to be, what was the document? And from that, there were several people there, and the recording was done with his knowledge. And so there'll be testimony as to the markings on the document. There may be testimony, I think very likely, from the aides who were there about their conversations with him about it on the audio. One of them, and I don't know if that person's been identified, said, "Now we have a problem." Okay, right after he waved around and said, "I never declassified it." The person, it's on the audio, says, "Now we have a problem." I presume testimony has been taken from that person. Maybe they had conversations afterwards. So the audio is very damaging. If it was the only thing the feds have, I mean, maybe he's making it up. Maybe the document he was showing was not actually what he said it was.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But I can't believe they would bring an indictment on that without having more evidence. And we know, or at least we think we know, that at least one of the aides testified before the grand jury. I presume they all did.
Yeah, Professor, we got to go. Sorry, we're up against the clock. Professor Jacobson, okay. Cornell Law, thanks so much for joining us, as always. He joined us on the Turnkey.Pro answer line. Now it is 7 a.m. on AM 560 WIND.
It's an illegal leak by the special prosecutor. I'm Dave Anthony, Fox News. That's former President Trump's claim on social media to a new audio recording of him